Angeles. The destructive fires have changed the character of the city forever. Thousands of homes gone, beachfront mansions burned to the ground, complete neighborhoods obliterated, and failed leadership from Sacramento to LA City Hall. And Los Angeles and the state of California were not prepared. The mayor of LA was in Ghana and nowhere to be found until days later. The fire hydrants were empty. Firefighters left helpless. Evacuation orders barely communicated. Brush wasn't cleared. The mayor cut the fire budget. State Democrats slashed wildfire prevention funding. And all these failed policies are contributing to literal destruction and the historic devastation of people's lives. The governor was asked about fire hydrant failures, and here's how he responded. Watch.
With water, obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe one fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local.
This is a disaster response failure from a one-party state that refuses to admit its wrongdoings, including LA Mayor Karen Bass. And she's refusing to say anything about why she didn't have the city prepared. Take a look.
Owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home? Madam Mayor, let me ask you just again, have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?
No. Ma'am, hold on 1 second.
Madam Mayor, just a few words for the citizens today as you return to deal with the catastrophe.
Can you take this down?
As we pray for recovery and for the health and safety of Los Angeles, there must be real political consequences for these undeniable policy failures. Joining me now, State Assemblyman from California's 63rd District, Bill Essayli. Wonderful to have you back on the program, but sorry it's under these very tragic circumstances. And we're looking to you, Assemblyman, to try to put what we are seeing in perspective, because this is historic and preventable destruction. And the state didn't seem ready for it at all. What went wrong?
So, Kimberly, California is not new to wildfires. I mean, this is to be expected. I mean, obviously, this was a strong wind event. It was hurricane winds, but we were not prepared. Every time there's a wildfire, we always say we have to change the way we do business in California. We need the water reservoirs. We need to have water infrastructure. We need to invest in wildfire prevention. The Democrats cut the wildfire prevention budget by 80%. In the state budget. That's not really being reported in the outlets right now. They only spent $200 million in our last budget on wildfire prevention. We need to get the regulations out of the way. I talked to my firefighters. I said, why aren't we doing these controlled burns? Even, I'm not that old, but I remember being younger and I would see fires during the off seasons that the firefighters would do to clear some of the brush and the fuel. They said, oh, we can't do it because we have to go through CEQA. CEQA is an environmental study and impact report, which takes months or years to complete. So the state expects the fire departments to go through CEQA to make sure there isn't a bird nesting in the vicinity. Well, guess what? All the birds are dead now. All the birds are
Right.
dead. The homes are burned. And what about all this carbon? They're so obsessed with climate change and carbon. This fire put out more carbon than they're going to save over the next 10 years or whatever. They're not, I don't even like to call them environmentalists. They're not good for the environment.
No,
It's
they're
just
not.
bad, stupid policies. And we have to change the way we do business.
You're absolutely right. And all of this is carcinogenic. 'Cause I have so many friends there. They're cancer survivors, et cetera. And it's like, we need to leave. They're afraid about what's going into their lungs. And I mean, it's really tragic, not only just environmental, but health disaster as well. The repercussions of which that we will probably see unfolding in the years to come. It really breaks my heart to see what's happened, the destruction. I just, in Florida, we have friends that have homes in California, and they were just in tears because their homes went up in flames, and all of Pacific Palisades like destroyed. I mean, this is terrible. This is infrastructure that's going to take a very long time, a decade, to rebuild and get it back up and running. But let's talk about Sacramento, where you are. What have Sacramento Democrats been up to while all of this has been going on? And what is it going to take to get some real sense of urgency?
You know what they've been up to here? It's party week. It's our first week back. They're out having dinners. They're
Yeah.
having drinks with the lobbyists. They're having a good time. And today on the legislature, you know what we had? We didn't have a special session to fireproof the state. They had a special session to Trump-proof the state of California. That's what they did today in the legislature. I sent a letter to the governor. I said, we don't need a Trump-proof. We need to fireproof the state. I don't understand why we're doing anything other than focused on providing relief and financial support for the firefighters and the victims and changing our policies in the state of California. That's the only thing we should be doing as a legislature. They have no interest, Kimberly. They don't care. These people are, I say they're the worst of two things. They're arrogant and incompetent. And it's a really dangerous combination. And you could see that with Mayor Karen Bass just staring into oblivion there. She doesn't
She's
say
pathetic.
anything because she
She
has
should
nothing
resign.
to say.
She couldn't even answer or say one thing, offer any condolences. I mean, that is honestly like disqualifying in and of itself. She just sat there and just like looked down, dazed and confused, has nothing to say, complete abject failure, lack of leadership. And it's so sad because people's lives are destroyed. And her incompetence has only exacerbated the problem. I want to talk.
Was she in
Yeah, go ahead.
Africa?
Why was she in Ghana? What was she doing?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we didn't know this was coming. I got reports days before, just like in Florida, they have hurricanes. They prepare days before, moving equipment, moving personnel, getting plans in order. She took off to Africa. She should have been there. She should have been there.
Yeah, well, it's sad because she made a choice and there has to be consequences and personal responsibility. And for her lack of leadership and what she's done, she's like cost lives, countless amounts of, property destruction, damage, all of the above. I'm going to go back to something you
50
said.
billion is the estimate so
How
far.
how far? 50?
50 billion is the
Insane.
estimate of loss right now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So as you said, they want to Trump proof. That's what they're worried about. That's what's the emergency in California. Okay. Trump proof California, but they don't actually care, in my opinion, and by the facts and the evidence, about helping the residents. What does it tell you?
It tells you what kind of people they are. They care more about protecting criminal illegal immigrants from deportation than saving their own citizens from wildfires. And I hope the people wake up. The people elected these people. They just elected Karen Bass. She ran against a fantastic candidate, Mayor, could have been Mayor Caruso, who used to be Republican. He's a developer. He's a businessman. And instead they elected Karen Bass, and they elect a supermajority Democrat legislature. These people are incompetent, and unfortunately now the public has to suffer the consequences of their leadership. I hope people wake up. Elections have consequences. You have to elect people who know what they're doing. These people, Karen Bass, the Democrats here, Kamala Harris, they've never accomplished anything in their life. They don't know what they're doing. We need good, smart people in government, and we don't have it.
Well, and we have to be solution oriented. So you say to yourself, okay, what could have happened? What should have been done to prevent a tragedy and destruction of this magnitude, historic?
Yeah.
And it really frustrates me because, you elect people and you hope that they actually are going to have at least some basic core competency to understand how to prepare themselves for disasters like this. This is not new, like you said, to California. We know that California is prone to the wildfires. And I remember when President Trump went with Jared, et cetera, met with Gavin when they had wildfires a few years back, et cetera. But from your perspective as a lawmaker, what would fireproofing look like to you? And what do you believe are the top priorities?
Number one, reducing the fuel in the wildlands. You have to clear out the dead trees, which we don't do anymore. The environmentalists won't let us touch the dead forests, the dead trees. Let the timber companies in, clear them out. You have to do controlled burns. You have to create big fire lines, maybe a couple miles wide. So when there's a fire, it gets contained. It doesn't just grow out of control. You can stop it. So we have to do controlled burns. We have to underground power lines in dangerous areas. A lot of these fires get started by power lines, whether a tree falls on it or some other event. We have to do that. We have to invest in fire prevention. 200 million for a state the size of California is a joke. They're spending $5 billion a year on illegal immigrant health care and $200 million on wildfire prevention. That just shows you where their priorities are. And then you got to invest in infrastructure. The voters have said we want water infrastructure. They approved a bond for $6 billion. They haven't even, that was 10 years ago, they haven't built a single thing. They won't build water desalination so we can have fresh water out of the ocean. You have to actually build and do things and improve the infrastructure. There's a lot we can do. That way, when these things happen, they can at least be prevented or mitigated, so they're not as bad as what we're looking at right now. I don't buy this that there's nothing we can do. If there's nothing we can do, then get out of office. Why are you there? Let someone else go in and try then.
I couldn't agree more. And let's talk about the insurance side, because that is a big part of this. How will these homes, get insurance to rebuild, et cetera? I know some of the people, obviously, God bless, worked hard and are quite affluent that come from Pacific Palisades, but memories are priceless. Photographs are priceless. And it's very sad what's happened. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic background is, but some people are really going to be struggling, and that's their primary home. They're homeless. They have nowhere to turn to. And we know how cumbersome the whole insurance industry can be. So where's the state insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara? Like, what is he doing?
The insurance market was already in crisis. This fire is now going to put us over the cliff. I'll just tell you how bad it is. In the Palisades area, 70% of the homes there had their fire insurance canceled a few months ago. The
Terrible.
fire insurance companies, they don't want to insure California anymore. The risk is too high. So what California did is they created what's called a FAIR plan. That's basically, it's an unfunded insurance policy. So a lot of these homes that are being burned are in this FAIR plan, but there's no money in it. And the state is going to look to the insurance companies to cover the shortfall. And that's why they're running out of the state of California. Insurance companies are looking to get out of business in California because they're going to go bankrupt doing business with this state. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a huge disaster. Like I said, it's $50 billion estimated loss right now. Just to give you an idea, the entire budget for the state is about $300 billion. So you have 50 billion already in loss. That's a big number. And ultimately, we're all going to be paying one way or another, whether it's through taxes or higher insurance premiums. It's not good.
No, it's terrible. We're just looking at the footage there, over 1,000 structures that have been destroyed. It's just devastating when you think about it. And it's just, wow, that's really compelling images. People trying to battle the flames. And it's a lot of emotion involved in this. And it's very, very sad what's happened here. And let's talk about the state-backed FAIR plan. Won't that be insolvent now?
Yeah, they don't have $50 billion. So the way it works, I don't know if you remember, but when the bank went under in California, they looked to all the other banks to basically pitch in to cover its losses. So that's sort of the same model they have for the FAIR plan. When the FAIR plan goes insolvent, they're going to assess the other insurance companies proportional to their market share. So what that means is that if you're doing business in the state of California, you don't want a big market share because that means you're going to get a bigger bill from the FAIR plan. So that's why these insurance companies are all racing to cancel as many policies as possible to lower their market share because they want to lower their exposure. It's a big problem. It's a very big problem.
And there's been a lot of criticism about how this has been handled, not only just on the LA mayor, but on a state level. You did say that you wrote the governor. Can you tell us about that? And we're taking a look right there at Governor Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, so we're in a special session right now to Trump-proof the state. So I wrote him a letter. I said, we shouldn't be focused on Trump-proofing. We need a fireproof. And I'm asking him to call a special session. He loves to call special sessions. He called a special session on gas prices and said the oil companies were price gouging California, and no, it wasn't true. And then he called a special session to Trump-proof California. So now I'm asking him, call a special session so we can fireproof California. We can address the insurance crisis, the lack of funding for wildfire prevention, and then we can change the policies, the environmental rules and regulations that keep us from mitigating these fires when we need to. Those are the three things we should be focused on right now.
I think that's great and sage advice. I think I'm going to text it to him as well. We even saw literally prominent Hollywood figures slam leadership. Is this the kind of the shift that enacts real change?
I hope so. I hope so. And I hope they remember this when they go to vote in the next election. That there's no one to blame but the Democrat Party. And everyone's saying it's not a time for blame. It is a time for blame. People need to be held accountable. People need to know who's responsible for the situation we're in. The mayor is a Democrat. The governor is a Democrat. The supermajority in the legislature is a Democrat. There are no Republicans to blame. I'm one of 80. We only have 19 Republicans in the legislature out of 80. They own this. This is their policies. And if they can't do it, then get out of the way. Let us try. Let us do it. So I think it's appropriate to assign accountability at this time.
No, you're right about that. But there's always been sort of just like, just the abject failure in terms of political representatives, prominent figures, whether it's a governor or the mayor, to actually come up with an actionable plan, take responsibility, and do something about it. I mean, I don't know how there is an emergency session right now to handle this, to come up with like a 5-point plan, etc. Like all I see is, LA burning, and I actually don't know what they're doing about it. And California is right there on the ocean. So how do we have a lack of water? There's some water right there. It's insane.
It's really bizarre. I saw this with the crime bill, Prop 36, which passed overwhelmingly by the voters. But the Democrats, they do not want to ever admit that their policies are wrong or that they failed. They can't do it. They won't do it. So they refuse to admit that their criminal policies, their soft on crime policies were a mistake. And they doubled down, and the voters just slapped them back and passed a ballot initiative. And I'm starting to feel like it's the same thing here. They will not admit that their policies led to the wildfire destruction. They don't want to admit they're doing anything wrong. So they don't want to have a special session. They don't want to admit they did anything wrong or change what they're doing.
That's
they're going to double down on stupidity.
So, and by the way, self-interest. Self-interest. They want to protect and preserve their political careers. They don't want to accept personal responsibility. They don't want to say they could have done something better and be honest and actually do something about this. It's all about them, and that's terrible. It's just exactly what we talk about with DC, with the swamp, the whole thing. Yep. So what does the plan look like for state Republicans moving forward in the months ahead? And what are some of the benchmarks that you think should be achieved?
Absolutely. We have to draw contrast. We have to, like you said, offer solutions. So next week, I want to work with my colleagues. We need to roll out our fireproof legislative package. What are the bills? What are the policy things that Republicans will introduce to change this? We want to put text to paper and make the Democrats vote on it. We want to do contrast, but ultimately we got to take our message to the ballot box. So when the legislature is up for election every 2 years, as they are, people need to remember this, and people need to vote with this in mind. You said something interesting, Kimberly. The Democrats, their only focus is power. It's party first, always. With Republicans, always get criticized. Oh, you guys always fight each other. Well, because for us, it's country first. We have principles. We actually care about this. It's not party first. And I think that's the big difference between Republicans and Democrats. They have no principles. They almost believe in nothing other than their own power. And that's how they operate. It's very sad. It's sad for the people.
Well, it really is. And it's just unfortunate. And I have to tell you, the juxtaposition of the before and after pictures are just, they just take your breath away when you look at what was.
If that doesn't
what
convince you that the Democrat Party has failed you, what will? Your home was literally burnt down. Your community's burnt down. If this isn't an indictment on the Democrat Party and its failures, what will be?
Well, that's the thing. And you see this failure over and over again in Democrat-led cities, municipalities, and blue states, where you have rampant crime, looting, all of the above, a crumbling infrastructure, crumbling economies, lack of jobs, lack of manufacturing, all of the above, creating a lot of stress and strife in the community. And to see California, which, was my home, I was born in San Francisco, as you know, just completely the state just decimated in Los Angeles. And I worked as a prosecutor for many, many years there. It's just heartbreaking because I can't stand it when you have, tragedies like this that are preventable. This should have never jumped to this scale.
It's really sad and very similar to you. I mean, I grew up born and raised in California. It was awesome. It was a beautiful state. And my parents were immigrants. They came here from Lebanon, and they always told us how lucky you are to live here. You're so lucky you're in California.
Yeah.
You have running water. You don't have trash in the streets. You don't live in a third world country. And now I'm starting to look around. California is starting to look more and more like a third world country. And Caruso even said it. I mean, not having water in the fire hydrants is something you expect in a third world country. You don't expect that in the United States of America, to not have basic water in fire hydrants. It's embarrassing. And I feel like we're losing our country. And so thank God President Trump won that last election. And hopefully we have a chance now to turn things around, because this is not sustainable.
No, you're absolutely right. And, we just always thank you for being on this program, being such an honest and compelling voice about the issues that matter. I'm very sorry for the residents, citizens of, your state to have to go through this. And the fact of the matter is, like you said during this program, elections have consequences. Be very careful about who you put into office. Karen Bass should resign in shame as the mayor. She can't even make a sentence or say anything or offer condolences or provide any answers or solutions. She was off in Ghana. So it's such a shame to see this happen. And, the governor needs to do something about it, as well. Like you said, fireproof California. But again, we thank you. We don't want to keep you from your duties. There's a lot going on in your state, and I know they need your time and attention. And I know you're very committed and focused on doing that and providing relief to your constituents. So, Assemblyman Bill Essayli, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, God bless. And coming up, more full coverage of the California wildfires. And in the meantime, also be sure to support the 1775 Coffee Company. 1775 Coffee is brewed to perfection. It is crafted with precision and built on patriotism. The farm-to-cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced. And that is not all. 1775 Coffee stands for quality, freedom, and pushing back against the left-wing corporate agenda that's taken over so much of the coffee industry. So go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. What a way to start the new year, right? 15% off. That's a good deal. And at this hour, fire crews are still working to contain the nearly 20,000-acre Palisades fire. It will be perhaps the most costly natural disaster in U.S. history. And thousands of homes, some of the most beautiful neighborhoods in the world, are now truly unrecognizable. Joining me now, former Deputy Insurance Commissioner for the state of California and former California Emergency Response Official, Jennifer Kelly, joins us on the program. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today. Our viewers are really interested, obviously, in this story. A lot of prayers go out to the people who have suffered catastrophic loss in what could have been preventable loss in the beautiful state, my home state of California. I know you've been sounding the alarm on these issues in California for years, and including mismanagement of water and forests. Tell our viewers what went so wrong here.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. And thank you so much for your service, former First Lady of San Francisco, and you are synonymous with the great state of California. Look, this is something that has 7 or 8 different problems stacked one on top of the other, and they are finally coming to a head. As we saw just a few years ago with the Malibu fires in 2018, and now with the Pacific Palisades fires. These problems are all really stacking one on top of the other and coming home to roost. It really did start with this proposal by Nancy Pelosi in 2010, 15 years ago, to stop the flow of water to Southern California. On top of that, then Governor Jerry Brown, one of the most radical environmentalists who ever did serve as governor of California, piled on top of that. And in 2015, he enacted very strict water requirements for the entire state of California, but it was mostly aimed at stemming the use of water in the city of Los Angeles, which he thought was a big problem. And you know, from being a Northern California gal, sometimes the North and the South kind of fight and they don't really understand one another. And Jerry Brown really did come from this perspective where he didn't have an understanding of the lifestyle of Southern Californians, where, you know, that's where freeways were invented. That's where the cars were invented. And people really enjoy the lifestyle in Southern California. And so he really tried to squelch the whole lifestyle of Southern California by really limiting the water in the state of California, and in particular Southern California. And it's interesting, before I jumped on here, I looked at the LA Department of Water and Power's website. They still have these stringent requirements for watering in the city of LA, even in the wake of these disasters. They say you can only water with your little sprinkler head for 8 minutes at a time, once per day. And if you are caught watering more than that, you will get a ticket, and the tickets range anywhere from $300 up to $2,400 per instance. And believe me, there are a bunch of Karens walking around with little notepads ready to give tickets in Los Angeles. And so that is part of the problem. You have radical environmentalism combined with all of these state regulations and all of these city ordinances, and it is just creating a powder keg.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And they do enforce it. They're quite, vigilant about it. It's one of the reasons my brother left, California. He used to text Gavin all the time because he was like complaining about the way that, Gavin ruined California with the water, this, that. People couldn't even fill their swimming pools. You can't water your lawn. I mean, the whole thing is just bananas. But now you see the consequences of those feckless choices. You see that beautiful area, Pacific Palisades, obliterated, no longer in existence. And it's going to take a decade to try to even build back, any of this. It is so extensive, the damage and destruction that you see. And it just goes to show you two of the most powerful and deadly things in the world are fire and water. We've seen the water issues, obviously, with floods, et cetera, and hurricanes, here in Florida. But, this was something that people are aware of. Like, we're aware about floods and hurricanes and wind and whatnot in Florida. They're aware about forest fires in California. Why did this happen? Like, what happened that they just allowed this to occur?
Well, it really is those confluence of events, and the big one I mentioned is the water, but you're right, it has a lot to do with forests. And people say, oh, well, I think of Los Angeles as being an urban area. There's not a forest nearby, but if you look at many of the suburbs in California, they do back up to a forest. That's why Los Angeles is so beautiful. It has the trees as the backdrop. And the problem is another Democrat, Bill Clinton, going back 30 plus years, actually enacted a environmental rule that doesn't allow the Forest Service to go in and clear and rake the ground of the forests. And we sort of jokingly refer to it as saving the spotted owl, but that's actually what it was intended to do, was to save this one species of a spotted owl. And that was in the 90s, and that rule has never been changed. Not by Democrats, not by Republicans. And that's something that I believe President Trump is looking into, because he's been talking about the forest floor for the past couple of days. Yes. Who knew we would be in 2025 and be talking about such wonky things, but that is part of what contributed to this. Then you have on top of that, Kimberly, the deadly mistake of defunding the Los Angeles Fire Department by $17 million. And then on top of that, you also have the deadly decision of Los Angeles as a city to defund the police $150 million in the wake of the George Floyd riots in the summer of 2020. And so you have all those confluence of events. I'm actually shocked that there have only been 5 deaths so far. And I think that speaks remarkably of the people of California, the strong will. You're showing people evacuating their horses there. This is true grit, and this is the true test of the human spirit. And Californians themselves passed the test because they got themselves out of these situations, these very dire situations. However, the politicians in this case failed the test miserably.
You know, you brought up a good point, which was President Trump sounded the alarm about this. You know, for years, he warned of this, literally. It seems that Democrats, perhaps, you know, are just too consumed by their blind partisan rage to actually make the needed change.
Yeah, I think so. And look, they pray at the altar of radical environmentalism. And it's always so interesting because, you know, I have studied Gavin Newsom's politics and his background and looked at his, you know, financial disclosures every time they come out every 4 years. And he is not really a radical environmentalist. He owns stock in British Petroleum, BP. He has benefited from the support of the Getty oil family. And so, you know, a lot of people lay the blame at Gavin's feet, but this is really part of the overall political structure. If Gavin did not bend to the knee of the woke environmental mob out there, Gavin Newsom would not be governor today. And that is just how it is. That's the price of admission to play in gubernatorial politics in the state of California. And so that is a real problem. Somebody out there, whether it's a Republican, maybe it'll be Rick Caruso in the future, someone has got to stand up to the radical environmentalists in the state of California, because look, what good is it to be a tree hugger when all of the trees end up burning down anyway? The policy doesn't even make logical sense. They could do it. They could do it, and they could set really a national example, Kimberly, of how you could do this smartly and how you could preserve and protect trees. Because if you look at Pacific Palisades, there are no trees there today.
Yeah, it's very sad. You're absolutely right. Like, where are the tree huggers now? No trees. What does recovery look like from an insurance perspective? Will the California Coastal Commission stand in the way of rebuilding efforts?
Ooh, you do know California well. The California Coastal Commission is just one of the huge barriers, you know, to building anything. In fact, to even, you know, having a natural wood chimney in your house. I mean, the level of detail that this commission of, you know, really unelected bureaucrats, the power that they have is pretty stunning. Here's where I think the narrative of the Democrats and the environmentalists will go next as they are in the hot seat. I think they're going to turn against all of the insurance companies who do business in the state of California. And they're going to say, oh, these insurance companies aren't covering us, or they're not going to help us rebuild. Well, guess what? From a conservative perspective, should we force businesses to have to do business in a state that is mismanaging its resources and basically putting their bottom line and their customers at risk? I think the answer to that has to be no. I mean, you know, if you were a pizza shop owner, you can't have, you know, the state of New York or someone force you to stay in the state of New York and do business if they're telling you your pizza oven's outdated and you have to pay your employees a certain level. So I think it's going to be tough here. And I think the next debate we're going to get into, and as Democrats try to pivot and take that blame off of themselves, they're going to try to go after many of these insurance companies who are, you know, mostly Republican companies. And that's how they're going to try to turn the page and turn the debate to. But don't forget those core 7 or 8 issues: the defunding of the fire department, the stoppage of water to Southern California, the environmental rules that don't allow them to clear the brush properly on the outskirts of these neighborhoods. Those are the real core issues, and that's what we've got to keep our eye on the ball of.
Is that sort of the dirty secret here, that the radical environmentalists really don't want anything built ever, quite frankly? And they will, you know, bury residents in red tape for eternity, preventing them from building back their homes, their lives, taking care of their families, raising their children.
Yeah, that's such a smart point. And I've often said that this whole, you know, this 3-inch fish, this smelt, I call it a minnow, this fish that Nancy Pelosi claimed was the reason they had to shut down the flow of water
So
from
stupid.
Canada and from Northern California. I think there is an underlying story there, and there's a lot of evidence to support it, that the radical environmentalists and the Democrats who they elect just don't want growth. They don't like the growth in Southern California. Again, it goes back to kind of that Northern California versus Southern California battle. But they don't like growth. They don't like housing growth. They don't like commercial growth. They sure do enjoy going to their Starbucks and getting their Starbucks every day, but they don't realize that that is actually commercial growth, as they're showing some Starbucks there. This is a problem, and we've seen radical environmental terrorism throughout the years in California. Remember, many years ago, the Environmental Liberation Front (ELF) burnt down a bunch of apartment buildings that were being built in San Diego because they didn't want the growth. I will be very interested to see, who exactly started this fire. Is it going to be like the scenario a few years back in Northern California, where you had an environmental activist walking around with a Molotov cocktail and a dirty rag and a bottle? It's probably not the case, but it shows you the mentality of just how much they hate growth. They hate buildings, they hate housing growth. And that's a real problem, because the people of California, they want to prosper just like everyone else in the United States of America. And so that's a real battle that's shaping up.
Well, what role, and think about this, because I think it's kind of interesting in terms of building back and infrastructure, et cetera, the 2028 LA Olympics have on the recovery efforts. Do you think that changes anything in the dynamic of the equation?
Oh man, that's a tough one, because the city officials in Los Angeles, they'll be like Vladimir Putin. They'll be trying to clean up the streets and make it look like nothing ever happened here. Everything's
Exactly.
fine here, but we all know that it takes time to rebuild. And I think people will rebuild, but it'll be through the human spirit of the people we've seen already from Pacific Palisades and from Malibu, who are just devastated over these landmarks, places like Duke's, places like Mastro's, Moon Shadows. These are all institutions, and the culture of California that came out of some of these institutions. I believe they will rebuild, and it'll be, through that human spirit and private capital that will happen. But I think there will have to be some federal help here in the rebuilding. But again, it goes back to the question of how much money do you want to give a state where they're not protecting their citizens, and this could happen again in 2 or 3 years' time. It's a tricky question.
Yeah, that's the problem. But at least President Trump will be in to, really make the right decision about that from a, federal perspective. Any other parting and closing thoughts about this situation, what you expect to happen, and what you think should happen in the next, week, et cetera, to be able to make this recovery possible?
Well, you mentioned President Trump there, and I think that's such a great point. He has already said he's going to enact some executive orders on water and the flow of it. I think that's critically important. You have a president that has the capacity to understand these, complicated issues. He's also, worked with people like Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Devin Nunes over the years, so he understands these California unique issues in a way that's really impressive to those of us who've come up in California. And so I think that is hopeful and helpful. Help is on the way. But, to people in Los Angeles, you have to start voting differently. You have to start, voting your values. Democrats always tell us that we need to do that. Well, look, if you value your life, if you value your business, which is in shambles today, if you value your house and your pets and your kids, you got to start voting your values. You got to vote for people who support the fire department, people who support law enforcement, people who support, private business and your right to freedom. And, I've seen a lot of Hollywood stars coming out. I hope that continues, and I hope people listen to them and really pay attention, because look, in life and death issues, you really got to vote your values.
You absolutely have to. This is a very serious and sad and catastrophic example of just that. Jennifer Kelly, always a pleasure. Really appreciate you being on the program.
Thank you so much.
All right, stay well. And my closing remarks just ahead, but first check out our friends at the Birch Gold Group. It is a new year, and that means it's a great time to prepare for the future. Birch Gold will take you through the process step by step. answer any questions, and help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. What does this mean? It means you don't pay a penny out of your pocket to do so. You can text KG to 989898 today. That's KG to the number 989898. And I also want to bring you a special message from Patriot Lifestyle where you can save more and spend less on a whole host of different lifestyle benefits, from savings on travel, identity theft, legal services, and even pet care. Take a look. Guilfoyle here, and I'm so excited to introduce the Patriot Lifestyle Benefits Program. With our benefits program, you get a range of lifestyle benefits at an affordable price so you can save money and stay secure. For example, as a member, you will access exclusive discounts with NB Cash Back, so you can save more on your everyday expenses like groceries, restaurants, and even auto services. And with NB Travel, you can experience more but spend less by enjoying deep discounts on flights, hotels, entertainment, and so much more. These benefits are available to you and your immediate family to use anytime, anywhere. We also offer identity theft protection, so you can stay on top of any unauthorized, fraudulent, or illegal activity. And access free and discounted legal services, so you can protect your rights and receive top legal advice without breaking the bank. Plus, enjoy peace of mind on the highway with our roadside assistance program. And even take care of your furry friends with discounts on pet food, toys, medicine, grooming, and even trips to the vet. Our program is designed specifically for America First patriots like you, who understand the importance of letting your dollar Patriot lifestyle to the fullest. So don't miss out. Visit our website at patriotbenefits.net. That's patriotbenefits.net. Thank you again for choosing the Patriot Lifestyle Benefits Program, where real benefits and real savings are our top priority. Join us today and start saving now. And you can go to patriotbenefits.net to learn more, because these programs, they all come at an extraordinary value and they will greatly improve your life. In closing, we continue to pray for those impacted by the fires across Los Angeles. And it is a reminder why real leadership matters in the time of crisis. Fancy rhetoric, lofty ideas, empty promises, they don't solve problems when you need them solved. So-called leaders need to remember what it means to serve and make sure residents and citizens are safe and secure. That's the whole purpose of government, to protect people and make their lives better. I want to thank you so much for joining today on this very important episode. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok. Don't miss Don Jr.'s big show at 6 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the latest breaking news coverage. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I look